Our next speaker is someone that I've known for a very long time, since I was a little bitty kid, pretty much. I was
the way she is today.
Exactly. I had the fortune of volunteering at the Briarwood School at a very young age, and then becoming the babysitter nanny for this lovely lady's grandson. So I have had this family in my life for much of my life, and what a blessing it has been to me. And I am so blessed to introduce you today to Miss Yvonne Streit, the founder of the Briarwood School and the Brookwood community. Okay.
I'll ask Jenna. Hi.
Hello, good morning.
Hi. That was a good one. You know, Jana and I were walking over here a few minutes ago, and we were both nervous. We only do this about 200 times. And I apologize to the people from Missouri. I don't see you right now, but you will have heard this before. But we only have one thing that we can do, and that's it. So we have to take it. But seriously, it's so much easier to do this to people that you really will see for a few minutes while you make a talk, and then you're through. But you all hopefully will become part of our extended family. Because as collaboration goes, you know, I'm a math genius. And therefore you must know that in collaboration, 1 + 1 = 3. And that's what we hope will come from this today. And but we're frequently asked, and this morning, just at breakfast, how on earth did this thing get started? And what makes it stay where it is? And how does it keep going? And how did the program come to be? And they're all good questions. But you know what? This is certainly not the way it began. This is our first thing in this room. So you're inaugurating it. But that's where it was. And I wish you guys were over here where you could see this better. But it was an old farmhouse, 1932, and it would have cost so much to redo it, and then it still would have been an old farmhouse. And so we had to tear it down. It was in rather dilapidated. But now this is amazing to me. Everything you saw yesterday, or will see today, was in that farmhouse. That was our store right over there. And so you see, we started wanting to duck and run. We really had enough sense to know, you better think about this before you get into it. And that was where God came in and said, I'll do the thinking, you just get started. So we did. Now, the most important thing I think that we had when we started was a program. We knew what we wanted to do. We weren't sure how to do it. So Dr. Mark Gold from the University of Illinois, who I was fortunate enough to study with for a few minutes, only a few minutes practically, said, you know, it's method and content. What is your method? What's your idea? What is your goal? And now, how do you get there? Well, we started with a program. We had somebody not too long ago that came in and said, well, what program do you have? Have you figured that out yet? And they said, we don't have a program, but we've got a board and we've got a building. Well, who are your teachers? Well, we don't have any teachers. So you see, they had started at the wrong end. You've got to and be prepared to want to duck and run. You know, there were a million mistakes along the way, and there were some successes. And by the way, I'm 110 years old, and so therefore I get to use notes. Now, Jana doesn't get to use any. She's only 104. But the main thing that we want y'all to take away today, or not today, but while you're here, is the fact that God is the force behind all of this. And we're trying to illustrate with you, as we talk about our book, our book is called Everybody's Got a Seed to Sow. That means everybody's got a purpose, because that seed is going to grow into something, and so will purpose. And the title, as I said, Everybody's Got a Seed to Sow. I wanted to call it something else, but I was vetoed. I wanted to call it, It Was All a Setup. Now, you may have comments and questions, and we welcome them, but this is not a normal talk, and as you may have heard Vivian say, normal is simply a setting on a dryer. And that's really all it is. We haven't found any people normal yet, except me, of course. But anyway, you've gotten the book, and now one of your assignments is to take about 100 each home with you and sell them. All of the proceeds go back to Brookwood, and you know I'm kidding. But we don't have a marketing division, so we just cross our fingers and pray. Jana and I have kind of a deal we use as we're trying to sell the book. We call it our soft shoe number. And you can save your applause until you go home. But we're going to do that for you at no charge. And after we do it, you'll find out why we can't charge. But anyway, in the book, we talk about experiences and ideas that we call seeds. And we all have them. But they're waiting to be planted and nourished and harvested. You know, information without activation is useless. And that's a Lulu around here. These seeds that have been planted are a new way of life for every child we've got here, every citizen that we have. And we hope yours will be the same way, too. You know, statistics show, and I don't know much of it, I can't even spell statistics, but they say that the two fastest growing segments of society in today's world are the aging and the special needs population. Now, it's good that I'm where I am because I fit into both of those groups. And we've got a high-level autistic man who greets me every morning and says, "Good morning, Miss Streit. I'm so glad you're still on this side of the grass." Now, we don't hedge what we say. We just come right out and say it. But anyway, he is an outstanding young man, if you don't want to throttle him every 3 minutes. But no, I'm teasing on that. We do have another story I'd like to tell you about that really illustrates what I think you all stand for, and I also think for what we stand for. And that is a story about Mark and Jack. Excuse me. Mark was totally blind, brilliant man. He came into here, he was so thrilled to be with people that he could help. And one day I was taking a tour through, and all of a sudden Mark comes charging up, and he could charge even though he was blind. And he said, "Mrs. Streit, I need to talk to you, and I need to talk to you privately and right now." "Oh, okay, Mark. Privately, we'll step outside." So I left my tour with the other lady, and we went outside. And he said, "You know Jack?" And I said, "Oh yeah, I know Jack." "Do you know he doesn't talk?" I said, "I know he doesn't talk." "Well, he talks to me," Mark said. And I said, "I think that is just wonderful. I just think I'd love to hear him talk." "Well, do you know," I asked him, I said, "Why do you talk to me and you won't talk to other people?" And he said, "Because you can't see the outside of me, but you do see the inside of me." Isn't that neat? Jack was very deformed, and when people saw him, they didn't know quite how to respond. And that was it. You don't see the outside of me, but you see the inside of me. And that's what I'm looking at, a bunch of faces right now that are that in personification. I just love it. So, pardon me. We have a saying around here. We got a lot of sayings. And this one I love. And this is what Mark did, I think, and what we tried to do at Brookwood. Try to find an ember of God in everyone you meet, and then fan it into a flame. And that is just, it'll just multiply. It's just absolutely wonderful. But now I need to tell you about this lady that's sitting over here, very nice and calm. Well, believe me, that's a facade. She's not always calm, particularly when we were working on that book. She was the Chinese water torture. She did not give me 1 minute's peace. We've got to get this done by tomorrow. We've got to get that done. I'll tell you, without her, we wouldn't have gotten the book. There's no two ways. But let me tell you something behind the scenes that you don't know. You need to know that she has climbed Mount Whitney. She has skydived. She's been in and finished 9 marathons. She's double dipped the Grand Canyon and walked the Camino de Santiago. And if you're not familiar with that, it's this small little 700-mile trek in France and Spain. And now, just recently, and where are our friends from Italy? Over there. She finished a more than 100-mile addition to the Camino in Italy. And in that, here's God again. I mean, it's just wonderful. She's sitting in this worship center, a cathedral, at the end of the walk, and she saw a young Downs man. Well, being the shy person that she is, she turned around and immediately gave a conversation with them, told them what we were doing and how she loved to work with special needs people. And they began this wonderful conversation that bridges all gaps because of your connection with the special needs. And talked to them about Brookwood, and they have gotten the money to come over and are here today because of Jana and what we're trying to offer. But isn't that another one of God's miracles? And we welcome you all. So in trying to tell the story, you need to know who Jana is, and so I'm going to ask her to come up with her whip. The Chinese water torture.
That's me, my new name. It actually went a little further because while we were doing the book, I had said to her, I would hear her tell the stories, and I said in her voice, and I said, you know, Yvonne, we're not done when this book is done. I said, you're going to have to record this book on audio.
Yes. You see what I mean?
Yes.
And you know what? It took me 3 years to get her to that point, but it's done.
Yes.
And it will be,
That just reinforces. Yes.
and it'll be on Audible March 1st.
Great.
So it's very,
Great.
I had, sat next to her, torturing her the whole way in the recording studio, and it's wonderful to hear the story in her words and her voice. So I hope you all enjoy that. So I guess I'll continue my water torture. I know, Yvonne, that yesterday they heard a little bit about how this all began, and so, but I thought they might want to hear it in your words. So maybe you could, what was the beginning of this? And how was it? Or this?
Does this work?
Yes.
Good. Bad. Our daughter, Vicki, we have 3 girls. We got stuck with girls. Thank goodness.
A year apart.
Yeah, we kind of had triplets, but it was worse because one was doing this and the other one was doing that. One of them was Vivian, and you've seen her. It's just not easy, is it? And then Vicki had mumps when she was 1, which was very unusual at that age. and had encephalitis and meningitis as complications. And from that, severe brain damage, because the protective coating that grows around each cell of the brain does not mature until the child is 18 months old, and she was 12 months old. So as this hit, it just did devastation to everything. And that's how we got started. And I was determined that we could fix her. We could make her a decent person. We could get her better and et cetera. So I went around the United States. And I was very, very fortunate. My degree was in education and psychology. I'd grown up in a medical family, so I got all this medical stuff. I was hard-headed, she knows. And so that all these things began to come together to make something work. Isn't it amazing when you look back and you say, well, isn't that unusual that happened? And isn't that unusual that you were prepared for this? Well, you know, they say that coincidences are God's little miracles in disguise. And that's what Vicki was. Vicki was a tragedy that God turned around. And as you all come today, we feel like, how many groups have we had?
Well, we're well over like 275 organizations that have come here since we started the Center for Learning in July of 2013 through these conferences. So this is the 15th conference.
Wow. Well, the important part there.
To Mrs. Streit.
Okay.
We're having trouble here.
Hi. He's also Chinese water torture. The point of that is that we have then, that's us, because now we're somehow connected. And so we have touched over 200,000 adults with special needs by you going out, and here again, information without activation does not work. So you have to gear up for it. You have to say, we will. And when you want to throw in the towel, you grab hold of it just a little bit tighter. So that's something that I felt you would like to know, that through you all, other people are going to be touched. Not anybody cured, except us.
So I know, Yvonne, when you were traveling the United States and looking at what was available for children with disabilities, and you gathered some kind of creative ways of looking at how you might be able to teach these individuals, these young children, to have a more comfortable life. And you brought these back here to Houston, figuring the schools would want to grasp it and they'd be ready to go, and they didn't. And then what happened?
Well, we started working on utilizing some techniques that we found from Purdue, USC, UCLA, and the University of Illinois. And we, as Jana said, we brought it back thinking HIS, the Houston Independent School District, would grab it. Well, they haven't grabbed it yet, and that's been almost 50 years ago. But the school we started utilizing these techniques have now had 12,000 children go through, and 90% have gone to college. And the thing is, it's just nothing in the world but old-fashioned hard work and common sense, which I have decided is a total misnamed sense. It's the most uncommon thing in the world. Like again, didn't it?
Well, I'm just going to back us up a little bit so after coming back to Houston and talking to the schools and there was no interest, you started to realize you're going to have to start something yourself.
Yeah.
In the backyard.
Yeah.
And from the backyard, more and more people.
Well, it was another thing. Now, you've got to keep in mind who started this. I was in the backyard working with Vicki, and we had an obstacle course, Not that an obstacle course was going to cure her, but it made her more mobile. It made her easier for her to walk. Time after time, we had all these techniques that we were using. And I looked up, and there's a lady walking up the driveway. And she's got a little boy in her hand, walking up. And she said, are you the lady that works with the retarded? That name was acceptable then. And I said, well, I work with one. And she said, well, would you work with two? And she came in, and that was the beginning. And then it went from 2 to 8, and we had kind of outgrown the backyard. And so we went to a church and started letting children come, and we got all these volunteers. This one lady, I'll never forget her. She saw me out there working with some kiddos, and she comes by and she says, hi, I'm Ann Schomburg, and I've been watching you. I'd love to help you. And I said, well, that'd be great, but we don't pay anything. We don't charge anything, and we don't pay anybody anything. I don't want money. I want to help. I want to be of service. So she says, and I'm a physical therapist. Well, I just jumped. And so she began. And then another lady came. But this time we didn't have room in the church. But we began taking another type of child. Rather than what we call Vicky as functionally disabled, unable to feel comfortable and accessible to everyday society, they can't fit. Some of them can, but Vicky couldn't. So we called that classification functionally disabled. But we had this group coming that were just really strange kids. Some of them twice as smart as I was, but they weren't learning through the conventional methods of teaching. That's called learning disabilities. Now, that means someone of average or above average IQ not learning through the conventional methods of teaching. So you go another way. That's where Dr. Gold's thing came in. He said, you know what you want to have happen, but how do you get there? That's where you had to devise a different method. So we knew each child. We knew their dog's name. We knew if they have a bad foot or a shoe or a blister. We knew them. And we could then discern what was their best avenue of learning. Visual, auditory, etc., etc. But that just mushroomed. We could not keep them away. They came in 2s and 3s. And so that's when we started the school. And but then, may I go on with, Vicky outgrew it. She outaged it. She got too old for that type of a school setting. So we had to dream up something else.
That's right, that's right. And I know that when the growth was continuing and moving from church to church, you faced one particular behavioral challenge that kind of developed a new way of coping with a child like this.
You're talking about Tracy.
Yes, yes.
Oh yeah, we had Tracy. We were at Memorial Drive Baptist Church, and they didn't really want us, but they were trying to be godlike, and they let us come. We had Tracy is up on the roof of this church that they were protecting with their dying breath, which I don't blame them. They were entirely right. Tracy, come down, darling. You're going to get hurt and you're going to damage the church. I don't care. Well, I finally talked him down. You have to I'm sorry. You have to understand, he was only 7 years old and had been kicked out of 6 schools. But anyway, I talked him down, but he did tell me, he says, well, if I come down, I'm going to stab you in the leg. And I said, I don't care. Come on. Finally came down. Sure enough, he picked up this little stick that looked like a pencil, about that shape, and he stabbed me in the leg. Kept straight, true to his word. And it didn't injure me. It brought blood, but it didn't injure me. And then he threw himself down on the grass and starts kicking and screaming and hollering and carrying on. And I said, I'm going to tell you something. I know good and well that there is a good boy down inside of you, and we're going to find him, because that good boy is going to grow up to be a good man, and good's going to happen. But I stabbed you in the leg. I said, I don't care what you did, and you need to know something else. You're not going to get kicked out of this school. I don't know why not. I've tried to carry on. Finally gets up, walks to class. We kept him a couple of years, and he turned around because we caught him being good. We didn't see him being bad, even to the effect of turning our back away from him to show we're ignoring that. Well, he went on off and they moved to Ohio. And several years went by, like about, I think, 10 or 12, 15, I don't know, lots of years. And get a phone call. Ms. Streit, this is Tracy. I'm here in Houston and I wanted to come see that school because you saved my life. You saved my life. Well, hey, that's neat. Let's go. We'll take you out to see the school, which was no longer in Memorial Drive Baptist Church. It was in a building, an actual school building. And so I took him out, and he just had a ball. He talked to the guys, and it was just wonderful. And I'm sorry, I'm getting ahead of myself. He went on off. And I said, before you go, I need to know, what are you doing now? Thinking, did you just get out of prison? And he says, well, I live in California. I said, really? What do you do? Well, I'm in entertainment. Really? What kind of entertainment? Well, it's television. Well, he's got to be maybe sweeping the floor or something. And I said, well, what do you do? Well, I'm an actor. Oh? He says, yes, I'm the bartender on Cheers. And I nearly fainted. Of course, he nearly fainted because I didn't know what that was. So we got even. But anyway, he goes now by Woody Harrelson. And he has been fantastic. Isn't that something? Great story. Yeah. But the thing is that as he grew up, we were going to do this book. It was all a setup. We were going to do this book, and my secretary, and you know who over here, said we've got to have permission from him or we can't put the story in. I said, well, we'll never get permission from him. We can't even get to him. And they said, oh, yeah, we can. And I thought, well, go ahead. You'll see. And sure enough, my secretary called, got the agent, whose name, by the way, funny enough, was Tracy. And she said, well, my secretary said, one of Tracy's old teachers wants to talk to him about something. Well, honey, let me tell you, he doesn't make phone calls. But give me your number. So sure enough, we said, okay, that's fine. 5 minutes later, the phone rings. It was this Tracy. She says, well, I don't know who you are, but he's calling tomorrow at 3:30. And so I said, why don't you come over and see us? And he said, well, I'm making a movie over in New Orleans, and I may just do that. And I said, well, what movie are you making? And he said, LBJ. And I said, well, what part are you playing? He said, well, I'm LBJ. I've never seen that movie. Have you? But anyway, he came, talked to the kids at Briarwood School. There's 350 of them sitting in the bleachers, and he's telling all of these wild stories about how he got kicked out of school. I'm sitting over in the bleachers saying, don't do that, for heaven's sakes. Well, he carried it it was golden moments. He turned it around and said, that's what's going to happen to you all. and it was just neat. And then he came out to Brookwood, and he stayed here a long time. He got an LBJ hat from Neil, and then I took him to the airport, and we had quite a bit of time, and he sat there and he said, I have to say something. I think this was the finest day of my life. Wasn't that neat? So
He was very, very, very touched. It kind of reminded me of the Mark and Jack story where, Woody in his films, you kind of see one persona, but on the inside you saw a really gentle man that you could see really cared deeply. So it was a great day. So there's another story here I think might be really interesting to tell that I think our friends would like to know.
which
The,
one?
Which one?
The investment club story.
Oh yeah, we had an investment club, and there were 12 couples, I think. And it was, I don't know if you know about the investment clubs back then. It was really a social gathering. It was not much of an investment club. And we proved that by having to change its name. We changed it to Buy High and Sell Low. That is not what you're supposed to do. But there was a friend of mine was in there, and we were talking with Summer, and she says, what'd you do last summer? Or this summer? And I said, well, I'm working with a group of children over at St. Francis Episcopal Day School who are handicapped. And we've got some exciting things going. We're not curing anybody, but we're making them more mobile, and they're enthusiastic, and they feel great about themselves, what they're accomplishing, and it's just neat. You ought to come see us. And she said, well, I just might do that. So sure enough, a few weeks went by, and she called and said, can I come over? And I said, well, sure. So she did, and came over and watched what was going on, and we told her stories about some of the citizens, children. And she says, I am absolutely intrigued by this. The potential is great. I think Houston Independent School District ought to do this. And I said, well, we do too, however. But anyway, to make a long story short, one day I was standing there working with some of the kiddos, and a lady from the church came down, and she said, Yvonne, you wanted on the phone? And of course, you had to go to the office because we didn't have cell phones. This was 1967.
Oh.
Yeah. And so I went down, and it was Dossie Fondren. And she said, Yvonne, I am absolutely enamored over what you all are doing out there. And the Fondren Foundation wants to give you $100,000 to start that school.
Wow.
Well, I'm standing there thinking, oh my golly, I'm scared. This is great, and I'm scared to death. And you talk about wanting to throw in the towel. This is too much. You can't handle this. But sure enough, we did. You got another nudge. And that was the beginning of the Briarwood School. As I told you, we've had over 12,000 children go through now, and 90% went to college. That's not necessarily great, because a lot of things come from vocational schools and community colleges. But that turned them on. It turned them around.
So then these children were able, Yvonne realized, could go on to college, could go on and to have really successful careers. But the realization came that what happens now? What happens to Vicki and her classmates? Where will they go? What will they do? There was nothing that was really known that was being done for adults with disabilities.
That's when we began searching, and there was very, very, very little being done to elevate, to enhance their lives. There was caregiving, which was wonderful, but that was not doing what we wanted for Vicki. And so after that, we went to places like the Lamb's Farm outside of Libertyville, Illinois, and that was really great. They had a pet store, they had a bakery, they had a tea room, they had all sorts of neat things. And we thought, gosh, that would be just tremendous. And so we began to look other places and found things that were going on, and we brought those back and began adjusting their program, and this is where you all come in. We adjusted their programs, like Brookwood, into our program, like you all will do. Adjust yours. The individuals you know will then perk up and things will happen. And so we began looking, and we devised a program that we could use. And then it dawned on me that we'd have to have 2 people at least, leaders in the community, that would help us get money to start, because we'd not had any money up until then. And I knew 2 of them. I'd grown up in Houston with these people, and I knew 2 of them, went downtown to see them. I told the story praying like mad. And I told them they were 2 truly outstanding men. And there was just dead silence. And I thought, oh, gee. All of a sudden, Randy turned to me and said, Yvonne, do you think this is the will of God? And I said, yes. Dead silence. Jack said, nobody's going to get this unless we put it on the ground and can show them what we mean. So let's do it. My gosh, I'm just floating on cloud 28 or whatever one it was. And it was super. And then it dawned on me, they could get us the money, but they didn't. They didn't. They had contacts, but it was up to us to do it. And I'll be honest with you, I truly thought that the money would just fall into our laps, and you know, it didn't. 2 years, I spoke to every club, every church, everybody. People would cross the street to get away from me. And nothing happened. And on a Tuesday, I decided, we've got a board meeting coming up Thursday. I'm going to tell them it was not the will of God. I was wrong. We're going to throw in the towel. I'm getting ready to leave Briarwood that day. The phone rings. And I thought, I'm not going to answer it. I was just down. And the phone rang again, and I kept getting this, you better answer the phone. And I'm not going to answer the phone. The phone rings again. You had better answer the phone. I got this nudge. And I did. And it was a man from the Rotary Club. And he said, can I come by in the morning? I want to bring you something. I said, sure, come on by. And he comes in and he hands me a check for $10,000. Now this is way back. That was a lot of money. And I thought, well, should I tell him we're going to throw in the towel? No, I don't think I'll tell him. And sure enough, I didn't. He handed me the check, and I'm thinking, this is great, but I'm going to put it aside because we probably won't use it. My assistant director is coming running down the hall. Yvonne Chester from the Rotary Club called and wants to give us a check for $7,500 for the country place. Oh, whoops, wait a minute. Something's going on here. So we were kind of, well, gee. So we were dancing around my secretary's desk, rah, 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 rah. And the phone rings. St. Luke's United Methodist Church. Yvonne, we want to give you $25,000 for the country place. The dancing turned to dead silence. The realization, wow. But that wasn't the last. At 11:30 that morning, the Barrow Foundation called and gave us $30,000. Now that you can't ignore. And that's what started Brookwood. And
So that was 1981.
that makes me too old. Could you try another number?
Oh, at least 2012.
Yeah. But that's how it began. And so all of these things will show you, it can happen. However, it'll happen to you a different way. but you never know. Just be alert. Be alert, because someplace there's a hidden treasure along your path that if you'll open it, you never know what's going to happen. I'm sorry.
No, and there'll be someone that you'll meet that'll just kind of make a connection and open up a door. You just never know. And just remember when I heard that story the first time, Yvonne, it just made me realize that how much God's hand is in the development of Brookwood, in the development of all your organizations, and how easy it would have been for you to say,
He wouldn't let me.
I'm done.
I tried.
Yeah, I'm done. Well, we're close to the close of our conversation, but there's one favorite story I really love. So would you tell the James story?
Oh, God. Oh, that's a good one. We have a gala on New Year's Eve, and I'm going to tell you it is a gala. It's all underwritten, and the ladies wear long gowns. Now, this, not anymore, but this was way back when. And the tuxedo rental places give the men tuxedos, so with first class, I'm telling you. And James is one of our Down syndrome men, and he's walking down the steps at the inn, and he's looking at his cummerbund, and he's looking at his tuxedo, and he says, "Mrs. Streit, could I ask you a question?" And I said, "Well, you certainly may." "Just who am I marrying?" He says, "I had planned to remain a bachelor."
As you all know, I think that's one of the favorite parts about everyone, all our citizens, everyone we work with, is you just never know what they're going to say.
Yeah.
They're so authentic and they're so real. So we're at the end of our talk, but you know, we realize that over these years we've been given another seed to sow, and that seed is through our Center for Learning and expanding it through various ways that you'll hear more about in the future. But all of you are part of that now, and so we are not an isolated mission here, the west of Houston. You are not isolated where you are. We're all working together. We're all in collaboration, and together we all can make that impact and make a difference in the way everyone views and sees all these special people in our lives. So Yvonne, maybe you can.
Well, you know, we're kind of like Frederick Buechner. I don't know if you know him as an author. He has a book. I love the title because it epitomizes what we are. And it's called A Turtle on the Fence Post. And you know what? That turtle didn't get there by himself. Somebody put him there. And so when you want to throw in the towel, you want to quit, you want to duck and run, remember, a mighty oak was once a little nut that stood its ground. And that's what we are, a bunch of oaks. Thank you.